Isaac Calloway, 37, a rancher worn by years of sun and toil, was heading back to the homestead when he heard the rustle of leaves, soft at first, like a whisper. He didn't expect much from the woods that day, just the same dusty stretch of pine and brush that lined the edges of his land. But something about the noise tugged at him, a discomfort crawling under his skin. He reined in his horse, his hand resting on the rifle across his back, and squinted into the fading light. That's when he saw her. Tied to a tree, her body slumped in exhaustion, was a girl, no older than 16, if that. Her skin was pale and bruised, her once lustrous black hair matted and caked with dirt. The chains around her wrists were rusted, the links digging into her raw, bleeding skin. She was gaunt, so thin that Isaac could see the sharp outline of her ribs beneath the tattered remnants of a dress. The sight of her hit him like a blow to the chest. Isaac's pulse quickened, but his body remained still, his instincts flaring. She didn't move when he called out to her. She didn't even look up at the sound of his voice, as if the weight of her suffering had stripped away any hope of a response. He dismounted slowly, his boots crunching on the dry ground, eyes never leaving the girl. His heart clenched in a way he didn't understand, a feeling he hadn't experienced in years. "What in the hell happened to you, girl?" he muttered under his breath. His words hung in the air, unanswered. He stepped forward cautiously, reaching for the chains at her wrists, and when she flinched at the touch, he paused. "Easy," he said, his voice soft but firm. "I'm not gonna hurt you." She looked at him then, her eyes wide, fearful, and for a moment, Isaac thought he saw a flicker of recognition in them. "Water," she whispered, her voice rough, like it hadn't been used in days. "Please!" Isaac's heart stuttered. He didn't hesitate. Reaching into his saddlebag, he produced his canteen and brought it to her cracked lips. She drank greedily, almost desperately, as if the very act of swallowing had become a battle she'd long since forgotten how to win. When the water was gone, Isaac gently tugged at the chains, working to release her. Her body trembled under his touch, but she didn't resist. He carefully eased her to her feet, holding her up with one arm as he tied his horse to the tree she'd been chained to. She was unsteady, but she stood, eyes wide, still uncertain, but somehow trusting him enough to remain silent. "Come on," Isaac said, his voice gruff, but there was a gentleness behind it now. "I'll get you home. You'll be all right." As he helped her onto his horse and rode back toward the ranch, Isaac couldn't shake the feeling that he had just stumbled into something much darker than he could have imagined. The girl was only the beginning. And there was a story in her silence, a story that would soon catch up with them both. Shyla was a shadow of the girl Isaac had first found in the woods. In the days that followed, he kept her close, tucked away in the small cabin he called home. The worst of her wounds had healed, and the fever that had burned through her body had finally broken. But the silence still clung to her, like an old coat she couldn't shed. She spoke little, only when necessary, and when she did, her voice was weak, tired. It carried a history Isaac couldn't quite fathom, something heavy and broken that wouldn't be healed with a few nights' rest. Isaac didn't ask her questions. He simply gave her space, food, water, a bed to sleep in. He kept his own counsel, not offering any words of comfort that might sound hollow to someone who had suffered in ways he couldn't understand. He had seen hardship, yes, but nothing like this. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the distant hills, Isaac was working at the woodpile when he saw Shyla sitting on the porch, her eyes far away, staring out at the land. The colors of the twilight danced over her face, a softness that didn't belong to the ragged girl who had been tied to that tree. He leaned against the doorframe, his voice quiet. "You can stay here as long as you need to." She didn't look at him at first, but when she spoke, her words came out slowly, as if they were weighing down her throat. "I wasn't always like this," she said. "I wasn't always a prisoner." Her eyes met his then, clear, full of something unreadable. "I was taken, captured by raiders. They were selling me to whoever paid the highest price." Isaac's jaw tightened, but he didn't speak. She continued. They took me from my village. I thought I could escape. I tried." She looked down at her hands, fingers twisted with the memory. "I ran, but I wasn't fast enough. They caught me and kept me locked up, chained. They would have sold me off to some rancher, or worse, but I escaped. I don't know how, but I did." Isaac didn't flinch, didn't offer pity. He had learned long ago that pity was an insult. "Where were they taking you?" he asked. "South," she whispered. "To one of those hellholes where they sell girls for labor. They didn't care where. They didn't care who bought us. All that mattered was the money." Her voice trailed off, and Isaac stood there for a long moment, feeling the weight of her words sink in. A fire of righteous anger lit up inside him. He had seen enough cruelty in his life to know that her story was far from unique. But hearing it, seeing her, made it personal. He felt the old, familiar ache for justice stirred deep in his bones. And just as quickly as it came, it hardened into something else. "I won't let them take you again," he said, his voice low but firm. "You're under my protection now, Shyla. No one's going to hurt you while you're here." She nodded slowly, her eyes not quite meeting his. "I know," she said softly, "but they'll come for me. I know they will. I've seen them before. They don't stop. And they have connections. Power." Isaac's mind was already working, already planning. He knew she was right. Men like those raiders didn't give up easily. They would come looking for her, and they would come with violence in their hearts. But Isaac Calloway wasn't a man who backed down when something or someone he cared about was threatened. "I've dealt with men like them before," he said, his voice steady, though his blood simmered with the promise of retribution. "I know how to handle them. They won't get anywhere near you. Not while I'm breathing." Shyla looked at him then, her gaze searching, like she was trying to see into the heart of him. For a moment, there was a crack in her armor, and he saw something. Trust, maybe, or a faint glimmer of hope. "You're not afraid of them?" she asked, almost incredulously. "No," he replied, his gaze unwavering. "I'm not afraid of anyone who threatens what's mine." And in that moment, Isaac realized something that caught him off guard, a truth he hadn't expected. It wasn't just the land he had sworn to protect all these years. It was Shyla. She wasn't a stranger anymore, not just someone to keep at arm's length. She had become part of the life he had built, whether she knew it or not. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice a soft tremor, "for not turning me away." Isaac gave her a small nod. "You're safe here, and no one's taking you anywhere." The fire in the hearth crackled as they both sat there in silence, the weight of the promise settling between them. They didn't need more words. Not yet. Outside, the wind picked up, stirring the dust and the memories of what had come before. But inside, there was peace. And it was a peace Isaac was willing to fight for. Isaac Calloway had always trusted the land to warn him, but that day he felt the danger before he saw it. As he mended the fence near the eastern border, 4 riders appeared on the horizon. The raiders who had taken Shyla from her village and sold her like livestock. They stopped a few hundred yards away, dismounting with ease. Isaac's pulse quickened, and his hand went to the rifle resting against the fence post. The scarred leader of the group smirked at Isaac. "Well, well," he said. "Looks like we found her after all." Isaac's grip tightened. "You'll leave now, and you'll forget you ever saw her." The raiders laughed. "Not a chance, friend. She's ours, and we're taking her back." Isaac could hear Shyla moving inside the house. He had promised to protect her, and he wouldn't fail her. But there were more of them this time, too many to fight alone. The second man pulled out a map and grinned. "The price just went up. We want your land, cattle, your life, if you make us work for it." Isaac's jaw clenched. "I won't let you take her," he said, his voice steady. The raiders circled him, sensing the upper hand. But just as Isaac prepared to defend his home, a new sound approached. Hooves. A group of riders appeared on the horizon, moving swiftly and silently. Isaac recognized them instantly, their eyes sharp, purposeful. The leader, a tall man with long black hair, rode forward, his presence commanding. "Who are you?" the scarred man barked. The leader raised his hand, signaling for his warriors to stop. He spoke in a language Isaac didn't understand, but the raiders did. A murmur of disbelief rippled through them. "You will leave this land," the leader said. "These people are under our protection now." The raiders hesitated, sizing up Isaac. After a tense moment, the scarred man spat on the ground. "You'll regret this," he growled, and without another word, they left. Isaac lowered his rifle slowly, not fully trusting the quiet. Shyla appeared on the porch, her face filled with relief and confusion. The leader, Kai, dismounted and spoke to Isaac. "You're lucky," Kai said, "but you should not have been alone." Isaac nodded, still catching his breath. "Who are you?" "I am Kai," the warrior replied. "We have been watching over her for a long time, and now you are part of our tribe's protection." Isaac frowned, looking at Shyla. "I don't understand. Why help me?" Kai's gaze softened. "She is of our blood, and if you are to protect her, we will protect you. This land is now ours to defend." Isaac didn't know what to say. His world had just shifted, but one thing was clear. He had a new family, capable of defending what was his. As Kai and his warriors disappeared into the hills, Isaac turned to Shyla. She watched him with gratitude in her eyes. "You weren't alone anymore," he whispered, and for the first time, it felt true. The land was no longer just his. It was where Shyla had found safety, and where a tribe had found a home. Isaac sat at the fire that night, the light flickering across the hard lines of his face, his thoughts churning like the smoke rising into the sky. The ranch had been quiet, too quiet since the raid. His instincts told him to stay alert, but his body felt the weariness of the days spent under the weight of protection. Protection of land, of a girl, and now of a tribe he never expected to be part of. Shyla had gone to bed early, exhausted from the emotions that had rippled through her since the raiders had retreated. She had said little, but he had seen the way her eyes followed Kai and his warriors, that silent respect and bond that had not been born from words, but from something deeper, more ingrained. Isaac didn't fully understand it, but he could feel it. the quiet connection between Shyla and the tribe. It was later, after the last embers of the fire had burned low, that Kai came to him again. His tall, imposing figure appeared like a shadow in the glow of the campfire, his expression unreadable. The other warriors were quiet around the fire, their presence ever watchful but calm, as though they were no longer strangers in this place. "We will help you," Kai said, his voice low and steady. Isaac looked up at him, meeting the warrior's gaze, a mixture of wariness and curiosity in his eyes. "Help me? We will help you protect this land. We owe you more than just our thanks for saving Shyla. We owe you our lives. The land you call yours is now ours, too." Isaac leaned back, his elbow resting on his knee. "I'm not looking for anyone to owe me anything. I took in a girl who was in need. That's all." Kai didn't flinch, his expression as unshifting as the mountains in the distance. "That girl is more than a victim of circumstance. She is the daughter of someone important to us, someone who was taken from us." Isaac straightened, sensing the gravity in Kai's words. "What do you mean?" The fire crackled in the silence between them, and Kai's gaze grew distant, as though looking back into a time that had been long buried. "Shyla is the daughter of Elder Red Hawk, a respected leader of our tribe. He was a man of peace, a man who sought to end the endless wars that raiders and traitors have brought to our people. He was killed by the same men who captured Shyla. They wanted him gone because he stood in the way of their greed." Isaac's stomach clenched at the revelation. He hadn't known the depth of Shyla's lineage, only that she was someone caught in the wrong place at the wrong time. But now, with the weight of the past laid bare before him, he realized that this was no simple matter of a girl escaping an auction. This was about an ancient struggle for survival, a struggle that had cost the tribe more than just land. It had cost them blood. "And now, the tribe has sworn to protect me?" Isaac asked, though the question didn't sound as surprised as it should have. He understood now why they were here, why they had stepped in when they did. Kai nodded slowly. "You protected her when no one else would. That is a debt that cannot be repaid with words. We will stand with you. We will guard your land as if it were our own, and we will fight with you if it comes to that." Isaac ran a hand through his hair, his mind racing. He hadn't asked for this, but in a way, it felt like something he'd needed for a long time. More than just protection from raiders. He had lived alone for so many years, his only company the wind and the work. But now, with Shyla in his life and the tribe standing behind him, something in him shifted. He wasn't alone anymore. He looked at Kai, seeing the sincerity in the warrior's eyes. "You don't have to do this," Isaac said, his voice rough with the weight of the decision. "But I can't ask you to fight for something that's mine alone." "This is not just your land anymore, Isaac Calloway," Kai replied. "This is the land of the people who have been taken from, betrayed, and hunted. This is not just a fight for you. It is a fight for all of us. And as long as you stand with us, we will stand with you." Isaac nodded, the weight of the pack settling over him. He hadn't asked for this responsibility, but it was now his, shared with those who had nothing but loyalty and honor to offer. And in that moment, he realized the truth of what Kai was saying. They weren't just offering protection. They were offering family. The fire crackled louder in the quiet, the flames dancing like shadows of what was to come. Isaac looked over at Shyla, still asleep inside the cabin, and then back at Kai, who had stood by his side in a battle that had only just begun. "Then we fight together," Isaac said, his voice quiet but resolute. "For her, for you, for all of us." Kai's lips quirked up slightly, though it wasn't a smile. The days stretched long as Shyla's strength returned, each one bringing her closer to the girl Isaac had first found in the woods, yet still haunted by the weight of what she'd been through. She was different now, stronger, more assured in her movements, her voice no longer a whisper, but a steady, quiet strength. The bruises on her wrists had faded, but the memories remained, lodged deep in her eyes whenever she gazed into the distance. Isaac couldn't deny that he felt something for her. It wasn't just gratitude for what she had brought into his life, or the tenderness with which she cared for his land now that she was strong enough to help. It was something more, something deeper, like a pull he couldn't ignore. She had become a part of the rhythm of his world, like the wind that rustled the trees or the sun that rose each morning. She was a constant, something essential. But with every passing day, Isaac felt the growing tension between their worlds. She was part of something bigger, something ancient, and bound by an honor that Isaac didn't fully understand. Her loyalty to her tribe, to the people who had risked everything to protect her, remained unshaken. It was a bond that ran deeper than any relationship he had ever known. He had come to respect her tribe, the warriors who had stood by his side when the raiders had come. They were men and women of strength, pride, and honor, bound by a code Isaac could never truly claim as his own. But as much as he respected them, Isaac was wary of becoming too entangled in their affairs. He had fought for years to carve a life for himself, to protect the land that had given him everything. The thought of having his loyalties torn in two made his stomach churn. Yet when he saw Shyla with her people, when he watched her eyes light up in their presence, he knew that her loyalty to them was more than just a matter of blood. It was a matter of survival. One evening, as they stood near the edge of the ranch, watching the sun dip below the horizon, Shyla turned to him, her expression conflicted. She had told him of the teachings of her father, of the elders who had raised her, of the warriors who had sworn to protect their land. But Isaac saw the conflict in her, saw that she was torn between the life he had given her and the one she had been born to. "Isaac," she said quietly, her voice tinged with uncertainty, "I don't belong here, not like you do. My place is with my people." He didn't respond immediately, his thoughts tangled with the truth of her words. He had known it all along, that her place wasn't here, with him, but it didn't make it easier to hear. "I know," he said, his voice rough, "but I've promised to protect you, Shyla. And I don't know what the future holds, but I won't let them take you again." She nodded slowly, her gaze flickering toward the distant mountains, where her tribe's camp lay hidden among the rocks and trees. "I'll never forget what you've done for me, Isaac," she said softly. "But my people, they'll always be a part of me, and they'll always come first. I know you understand that." Isaac exhaled slowly, the weight of her words settling in. He understood. But that didn't make it any easier. In the days that followed, Isaac couldn't shake the feeling that he was standing at a crossroads, one that would determine the rest of his life. His loyalty had always been to the land, to the quiet, unyielding bond he had with the earth beneath his feet. But now, that loyalty was being tested in ways he hadn't imagined. The raiders were still out there, their hunger for revenge still burning. And the tribe's protection, though invaluable, would come at a cost. Isaac knew that. He also knew that with every passing day, his bond with Sheila and her tribe grew stronger. The question he kept asking himself was simple. Where did his loyalty truly lie? Was it with the land he had fought for, or with the people who had become family, in a way he never expected? As the winds howled through the valley that night, Isaac looked out over the ranch, his thoughts heavy with the weight of the choices that lay ahead. He didn't have the answers yet, but the pull of the tribe and of Sheila was undeniable. And in his heart, he knew that whatever decision he made, it wouldn't be just for himself. It would be for them all. The morning Isaac first saw Clyde Mason, it was like any other. The sun had just begun to rise over the hills, casting long shadows across the dry land. Clyde, a man Isaac had known for years, had ridden in on his horse, wearing his usual smile, the kind of smile Isaac had come to trust. Clyde had been a friend, a man Isaac had relied on when things were hard, someone who had helped him rebuild the ranch after storms and setbacks. But that morning, something felt different. The air was thick with tension, the wind biting at his skin, as if warning him of the storm to come. Clyde didn't waste any time. As soon as he was within earshot, he pulled his horse to a stop and jumped down, his boots heavy against the earth. Isaac was in the barn, mending a fence post, when he heard the familiar sound of hooves approaching. He straightened, wiping sweat from his brow, ready to greet his old friend. "Morning, Clyde," Isaac said, trying to keep his voice steady. But Clyde didn't return the usual pleasantries. His eyes were hard, a look Isaac had never seen before. He stood there for a moment, his hand on his hip, his expression unreadable. "We need to talk," Clyde said, his voice low. Isaac's stomach dropped, sensing the shift in the air. "What's going on?" "I've been working with the raiders, Isaac," Clyde confessed, his voice tight with guilt. The words hit Isaac like a punch to the gut. His mind raced as he tried to process the betrayal. Clyde, the man he had trusted, the one who had helped him through thick and thin, had been working with the very people who had caused so much pain in Sheila's life. It didn't make sense. "You what?" Isaac's voice was sharp, disbelief twisting his words. "You've been working with them all this time?" Clyde nodded slowly, his eyes avoiding Isaac's gaze. "I didn't have a choice, Isaac. The money, it was too much to turn down. They promised me land, cattle, anything I wanted, and I—" He broke off, his throat tightening. "You sold me out," Isaac spat, anger boiling in his chest. "You sold all of us out for a few pieces of gold." "I didn't have a choice," Clyde repeated, his voice more desperate now. "They know everything. They're coming for you, coming for the land." Isaac's mind snapped into focus. Clyde had led them right to his doorstep. The raiders, hungry for revenge, had been given everything they needed: Isaac's location, his plans, and the weakness they could exploit. "I'll fix this," Clyde said, his eyes now meeting Isaac's with an almost pleading look. "I can still—" "You can't fix this," Isaac interrupted, fury rising in his chest. "You've done enough damage already." But Clyde wasn't done. "I've led them here, Isaac. They'll come for you now. You can't fight this on your own. But if you let me help you—" "No," Isaac growled. "You've made your choice." Before Isaac could say another word, the distant sound of hooves reached his ears. He turned, his heart sinking. The raiders were coming. "Get out of here, Clyde. Now I'll deal with this," Isaac said, his voice cutting through the tension. But Clyde hesitated, his face twisted with guilt and fear. He opened his mouth to speak, but Isaac didn't wait for him to finish. He turned and walked to the cabin, his hands already reaching for his rifle. The battle was about to begin. As Isaac stepped into the open, the familiar sight of Kai and his warriors came into view. They had ridden hard, arriving just in time, their eyes sharp with the readiness of battle. The tribe had come to protect their land, and now it was time to fight. Isaac stood shoulder to shoulder with them, knowing that the battle ahead wasn't just for land. It was for honor, for survival, and for everything he had built. The raiders were coming, but Isaac wouldn't let them take what was his. He had made his choice long ago. And now, the fight for his land, and for Shiloh, was beginning. The sun had barely crested the horizon when the raiders arrived. Isaac heard the first thunderous gallop of hooves before he saw them. Too many of them, riding hard and fast, their dust cloud billowing like smoke in the dry air. The land that had once been quiet, the land he had fought to protect, was now a battleground. Isaac's heart slammed in his chest as he reached for his rifle. He had seen the smoke of the coming storm, heard the rumors, and now here it was, raiders on horseback, weapons raised, intent on taking what wasn't theirs. But Isaac Calloway was a man who would never give up the land, or the people who had become his. Shiloh stood beside him, rifle in hand, her eyes steely with determination. Isaac had no time to ask if she was ready. He could see it in the way she held herself, in the strength that seemed to surge from her very bones. The girl who had once been chained and broken was now standing taller than he had ever seen her, a warrior forged by the fire of her past. The first shots rang out, loud cracks that split the air and shattered the silence of the ranch. Isaac took cover behind the rock wall near the barn, steadying his breath. Shiloh crouched low, her face grim as she scanned the horizon. From behind the ridge came the tribe's warriors, riding in formation with deadly precision. Isaac could see Kai at the front, his face impassive as he raised his bow, releasing arrows that tore through the air like lightning. The raiders, caught off guard by the tribe's speed and skill, faltered for a moment, but they quickly regrouped. Isaac fired, his shots finding their mark in the chaos. Shiloh was beside him, moving like a shadow, taking down raider after raider with a precision that left Isaac stunned. He had always known she had a spark in her, but now he saw something else, the spirit of a warrior who had learned not just to survive, but to fight back. She moved with grace and fury, as if the desert itself had taught her how to fight. The battle spilled across the desert, the sound of gunfire and shouting filling the air, mingling with the cries of the dying and the living alike. The land beneath them turned to sand and blood, the heat unbearable as the two forces clashed. But it wasn't over. Isaac's eyes found Mason among the chaos, the man who had sold him out, the man who had betrayed them all. Isaac's heart skipped a beat as he saw Clyde Mason, no longer the friend Isaac had once trusted, but a traitor leading the raiders. Mason saw Isaac at the same time, his eyes narrowing with malice as he raised his rifle. Isaac moved faster than he thought possible, crossing the distance between them with a burst of adrenaline. He tackled Mason to the ground, his fists connecting with the man's face, the rage burning hotter than the desert sun. "You betrayed us, Mason," Isaac growled, his hands tightening around Mason's throat. "This is the price." Mason laughed, blood spilling from his split lip. "You think you've won, Calloway? You think they'll ever let you have peace? You're nothing but a pawn in a game You'll never understand." Before Isaac could silence him, the sound of a gunshot rang out. Kai appeared beside them, his bow still drawn, his eyes cold and calculating. Without a word, he shot Mason through the heart, ending the man's treachery with a swift and final motion. Isaac stood, panting, his chest heaving. His gaze swept across the battlefield. The raiders were retreating now, some already dead, others scattered into the desert. The tribe's warriors stood tall, their eyes fierce, with the pride of victory. But the cost had been high. Isaac looked at Shyla, who was kneeling beside a fallen warrior, her hands pressed to his chest, her face stricken with sorrow. He saw the blood staining her hands, both her own and the blood of those who had fought beside them. The battle had been won, but the land had been soaked in blood. Isaac walked toward her, his heart heavy. "We won," he said, but his voice cracked under the weight of what they had lost. Shyla met his gaze, her eyes dark with the grief of what had come before. "At what cost?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Isaac didn't have an answer, but as he looked around at the tribe, at the land that had become their home, he knew that this fight was far from over. The raiders were defeated, but the battle for survival, for honor, and for a future where they could all live in peace was just beginning. And Isaac would be there, fighting by their side, until the very end. The dust from the battle still hung in the air, swirling around the land like a heavy shroud. Isaac stood at the edge of the battlefield, watching as the last of the raiders disappeared over the horizon, their retreating figures swallowed by the vastness of the desert. His land, once a solitary stretch of earth he had fought to protect for years, was now more than just his. It was a place of shared struggle, of sacrifice, and of survival. The tribe's warriors had fought with the same fierce determination as they always did. But Isaac could see the toll it had taken on them. The warriors, now moving quietly through the aftermath of the battle, cleaned their weapons and attended to their wounded. There was a quiet dignity in their movements, but beneath it, Isaac could feel the weight of their losses, the fallen comrades whose names would be remembered, and the faces of those who had given everything to defend this land. He turned his eyes toward Shyla, who stood a few paces away, her expression unreadable as she surveyed the damage. Her face was streaked with blood, some of it her own, but there was no fear in her eyes anymore. There was only resolve. The girl who had once been broken by chains and captivity had become a woman forged in the fire of battle. She moved among the tribe like she belonged, her posture proud, her hands steady as she helped tend to the wounded. The bond between her and the warriors had deepened, and Isaac could see the respect they had for her. She had proven herself in ways he hadn't imagined possible. Isaac walked toward her, his boots crunching on the sand, and when she looked up, their eyes met. In that moment, all the weight of the past few weeks, the battles, the bloodshed, seemed to dissolve. He had lost so much in his life, the land, the solitude he had held so dear. But in the quiet understanding between them, he saw the possibility of something more. Something that wasn't just survival, but something worth living for. "You're part of them now," Isaac said quietly, his voice rough from the tension of the day. Shyla nodded, her gaze unwavering. "I've always been, but now they're part of me too. You are too." The words settled between them like a quiet promise. The bond they shared now forged in more than just the blood spilled on the ground. Isaac had never been a man who trusted easily, but with Shyla, with the tribe, He had found a place where he could belong, not just as a protector of land, but as part of a community that had accepted him. He had become more than just a rancher. He was now one of them, a man who had found his place not just in the earth, but in the hearts of those who fought beside him. The tribe gathered around the fire that evening, their faces glowing in the warmth of the flames. Isaac sat among them, the weight of their presence both humbling and comforting. He wasn't alone anymore. Neither was Shyla. They had found something in each other, in the land they had fought for, in the tribe that had become their family. As the fire crackled, Isaac looked at Shyla, his heart stirring with something deeper than gratitude. There was a connection between them now, something that went beyond the battles they had fought together. It was a bond of survival, of loyalty, and of honor. And in that bond, Isaac found a purpose that he hadn't known he needed. For the first time in his life, Isaac knew what it meant to be truly home. The tribe had united to protect the land, and now they would stand together to protect what they had built. And Isaac, with Shyla by his side, would honor that bond for as long as the land called to him. Isaac stood at the edge of his land, looking out over the valley that stretched before him, the scars of battle still fresh in the earth. The land was quiet now. The dust from the raiders' retreat settled, but the silence felt heavy, an unsettling stillness after the storm. The fields that had once been marked by the labor of his hands now stood in peaceful defiance of the chaos that had tried to claim them. In the days that followed the raid, Isaac worked to rebuild, but it wasn't just the land that needed mending. It was everything he had come to know. The fences had been repaired, the cattle rounded up, but the emotional cost of the war weighed heavily on his chest. The tribe had fought with him, bled for him, and now they had claimed this land as their own too. Their loyalty to him was unquestionable, and in their eyes, he was no longer just a rancher. He was one of them. The tribe had gathered that morning, as they always did when they were at peace. Isaac could see Kai among them, his tall figure standing apart, his expression unreadable. Kai had become more than just a leader to the tribe. He had become Isaac's closest ally, the bridge between Isaac and a world he never intended to be part of. Isaac had fought beside the tribe, earned their respect, but the choice before him now was different. As the sun hung low in the sky, Kai approached Isaac, his face as solemn as it had been the first day they met. "You've earned our loyalty," Kai said, his voice steady, "and our protection. But I know the burden of what we've asked of you. The land, the tribe, the people, they are yours now. It's time for you to decide how much of it you want." Isaac's brow furrowed, the weight of the words sinking in. He had built a life here, a life of solitude, of hard work, of doing things on his own terms. But now, that life was intertwined with the tribe's future. "I've never asked for any of this," Isaac said, his voice heavy with the truth. "I've always fought for the land, not for a people. But, you're right. You've given me something I never expected. You've made me part of something I never thought I'd be part of." Kai nodded slowly. "You are part of us. But the question is whether you will lead us as one of your own, or let us protect you from the shadows, from a distance. The choice is yours, Isaac." Isaac turned his gaze back to the valley, the wind rustling through the grass. The land had always been his, but now it was shared. The tribe's presence was no longer a burden. It was a gift, one that had come with great cost. But it was also a responsibility he couldn't deny. Shyla stood nearby, watching him with quiet understanding. Her loyalty had always been clear, her place among her people certain. But now, she, too, was a part of his world. The way she looked at him now, there was no turning back, no going back to the way things had been before. Isaac knew he couldn't stand at the edge of the land forever, unable to choose. He couldn't walk away from what had been given to him. He had spent his life alone, but now he had a family, a tribe, a people who had given him everything. He looked at Shyla, the woman who had changed his life, and felt the weight of their shared bond. "I won't stand in the shadows," Isaac said, his voice steady. "I'll lead, not just for the land, but for all of us." Kai gave a small nod, a flicker of approval passing through his eyes. Isaac knew the road ahead would be difficult, but with the tribe at his side, and with Shyla standing by him, he was no longer alone. The legacy of the land would no longer be defined just by his hands. It would be defined by all of them, united under the sun. And Isaac, for the first time in his life, knew where he belonged. The sun was just beginning to rise, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson. Isaac stood outside the cabin, his eyes scanning the land that had been his for so long. It was a place he had fought to protect, a place where he had carved out a life of solitude and peace. But now, as he looked over the ranch, it no longer felt like a mere piece of earth to him. It was home, a sanctuary built not just by his hands, but by the tribe that had sworn to protect it as their own. The winds of change had swept through the valley, bringing with them a new purpose, a new family, and a new future. Isaac had once been a man alone, his only company, the land he worked, and the cattle he tended. But now, the land was not just his, it was theirs. The tribe's bond to the earth was as deep as his own, and in them, Isaac had found something he hadn't known he was searching for, a sense of belonging, a family rooted not just in blood, but in honor and loyalty. Shyla stood beside him, her presence a quiet comfort, as she always had been. She had become a part of him in ways he couldn't fully explain, and in the soft morning light, he saw her not just as this girl he had saved, but as the woman who had saved him in turn. She had taught him the meaning of loyalty, of family, of a love that transcended the walls they had built around themselves. Today was the day that would bind them together, not just as husband and wife, but as leaders of a community that had become more than just a group of warriors. The ceremony was a blending of their worlds, the tribe's ancient traditions, intertwined with the future they were building together. The elders had come, as had the warriors, to witness the joining of two lives, two hearts, and two destinies. The vows they spoke were not just words. They were a promise to honor the land, to protect the people, and to carry forward the legacy of those who had come before them. Isaac's heart swelled with pride as Shyla took his hand, her eyes meeting his with a quiet understanding. The tribe had accepted him as one of their own, and now he had accepted them. Together, they had built something stronger than either of them could have done alone. The ranch was no longer just a piece of land. It was a home for their people, a place where they could live in peace, where the past and the future were intertwined in the soil beneath their feet. As the ceremony ended, Isaac and Shyla stood together, their hands clasped tightly, facing the land they had fought to protect. The sun was fully risen now, casting its warm glow over the valley. Isaac took a deep breath, feeling the weight of everything he had gained, everything he had lost, and everything he was willing to fight for. This was the life he had created, a life worth dying for. And as the sun shone down on the land, Isaac knew that he had finally found what he had been searching for all along. Not just a place to survive, but a place to live, a place to love, and a place to call home. If this story touched you, and you like this kind of story, subscribe and be here for the next one.